Are you a resistor in the church and it's not what you think? I'm Dr. Ray, and welcome to this week's Hosea International Speaks. We've been talking about the end time Ekklesia over the last few weeks and how you can take your city for Yahweh. We've been on this for about 15 weeks. This is the 16th week, something like that. And you may want to go back and review any of the sessions, especially in these days of the Ekklesia, which will change the face of how church operates in these last days. Today, we will be looking at resistors in the church and how they tend to rise up in the church just when change is about to happen. These are the ones who are so stuck in their ways that it would take a bulldozer to pry them from the mud that has now been changed or turned into cement. Let's look at the first of two types of resistors, and we will call the first one resistor A. These are those who do not know what is happening, probably because these are the ones who only come to church once in a while, the Easter and Christmas crowd. But they could also be those that sit in the pews every week, or they may even be deacons or regular attenders, but their minds are not engaging in the changes that are coming. Let's look at the characteristic of resistor A. These are the people who resist any change in the church or its ministry because they're ignorant. In other words, they just don't know any of the purposes of these changes or are just seeking to establish. These resistors realize that the changes are taking place faster than they can cope with, and besides that, they're all unable to understand the full meaning of all the stuff that is going on around them. Maybe I've seen those in different educational areas, people that just don't know. They're not ready for all of that is taking place because they do not see or can perceive all that Yahweh has been doing over the period of time they have not attended. They're unable to put the pieces of the puzzle together, and their fears get a hold of them before the leadership does. These fears, their ignorance, and their inner limitations become exposed to these new changes and things that are happening all around them. They're unable to understand it fully or have no jurisdiction to control it from the beginning. Thus, their objective and resistance to something they feel wants to swallow them and overwhelm them. There are three reasons why resistors A rise up in the church. The first one, they rise because they are ignorant of the times of change. They have not received all the valuable and necessary information concerning the purposes for which these new things and changes that are happening around them. So they need to be constantly informed of changes. Either that or they need to look into them, especially if they are in a position that puts them out front. Then they may have been deprived themselves of this knowledge by their own carelessness and ill-disciplined lifestyle, or they have been purposely deprived by those in authority above them. This situation could become very sticky. People will become threatened if they are aware that change is being planned without their understanding about it or why it has been considered, without proper dissemination of the information regarding those changes. 2, there is inadequate communication in times of change. These resistors rise in a church because the system of communication has broken down. Good communication is very crucial during times of change. We must not reduce our communication during times of change, but rather increase its flow so as to be out in front of any miscommunication. With proper flow of good communication, we can save time, implement changes in specific areas of the church, and reduce the number of mistakes that can happen from a breakdown in communication. Though major changes in the church do not happen without conflict and cost, it does not have to become a tool for the enemy to invade. Our vision for change must be attractive and inspiring to everyone in order for them to own it. We must communicate to all levels of church membership, even the little children. We must present wisely the need for change in a governing church. The third area for this type of resistor is unhealthy spiritual condition in the church. These resistors rise in many churches because of the spiritual condition. If the church is filled with people who have tremendous inner struggles, fears, and limitations, change is a fearful thing. Many psychological reactions can change can occur in a given situation. Fear of failure, of the unknown, seems to be a prominent weakness in many resistors. They draw back from taking risks in order to avoid the pain of failure. There is much more I could say about resistor A's, but then we'd be here another hour. Let's look at resistor B. They are those who will prevent anything from happening. Let's look at the correct characteristics of resistor B. These, and I quote, and put it in quote, unchangeable, rebellious resistors are people who resist any major change in the church or its ministry because they're unwilling to change and neither yield to obedience of Yahweh of this change. They will not allow these crucial changes at any cost because they have no desire to change their lifestyle or thought patterns. They will resist any change that will move them out of their comfort zones. You've been there? This sin of convenience, and I put that in quotes, holds them in their mold of hardness and rebellion. Again, self must not be afflicted in any change that takes place around here, is their motto. These type of resistors can, and I say softly, can cause a church split, run off the pastor, or the pastor just decides to leave. Let's look at the reasons behind the paradigm of resistor B, and we'll look at just 3 areas today. Number 1, they're unwilling to pay the price for change. These resistors are often unwilling to pay the price for the changes that are taking place in the church. Time and commitment, which is number 1 and 2, are involved in any change. They do not see the necessity to pay the price for this process of change to take place. Why, then they quote, why can't we live without this project or without that program? Is it worth all the inconvenience and unnecessary suffering? Seems to be their prevailing thought pattern. Number 2, they're opposed to the alteration of their spiritual position. They don't want their spiritual positions to be altered because of the coming change. When the implementation of changes bring others to a greater spiritual position and maturity, it rocks the boat of those who are spiritually immature, yet holding spiritual positions. The sense of fear of losing their spiritual positions and positional authority in the church runs high in most of these resistors. And 3, they are opposed to ministerial authority over their lives. This is a big area. These resistors attack change because they do not want to allow the senior minister and the leadership of the church to exercise ministerial authority over their lives. To allow Yahweh's man to have full delegated authority over their life spells disaster for them or to them. Quote, why should the leadership be allowed to dictate and control my life, they say. We don't need to be subjected to these bondages, is their thinking. Well, we're going to leave it there for right now and complete this section on reasons behind this type of resistor. We'll cover the 4 remaining areas. And we'll also look at stages in which resistors attack change at areas of attack on leadership targeted by resistors. You just might want to tell your pastor about this one that's coming up, especially if they're going through change because of what Yahweh is giving to the senior minister. Well, if you enjoyed this week's lesson or session, just hit the like button and share it with a friend, family, and even your enemies. And if you have yet to subscribe, now is a good time to hit that button. You can email me also with questions or comments at hoseainternational@yahoo.com or hoseaintspeaks@gmail.com. And you can give to the ministry by scanning any one of the two QR codes beside you. I'm Dr. Ray, and I'll see you next week on Hosea International Speaks.